When you've been preparing specifically for an event, be it an epic Grand Fondo or a championship race, you've got a lot invested in it, both physically and mentally. So the last thing you need then is for your bike to let you down. Now, of course, catastrophic things can happen to even the best prepared of bikes, but with just 6 pre-event checks, you can keep that chance to a minimum and get your bike as close to perfect as possible. Often the first thing you'll notice as you hit the first climb of the day or follow that first attack is how well your gears are working. You just can't get away with slow shifts or ghost shifts, or worse still, your chain actually coming off. But all we need to do, initially at least, to check is to run through our gears on the work stand. So how crisp are the shifts, both up and down the cassette, and then also in both chain rings at the front as well. If it's anything other than perfect, you just need to watch our How to Index Your Gears video, the link to which is in the description below this one. But fear not, it is an exceedingly simple task. Now, for those of you that are regular watchers of GCN's maintenance videos, you will know that good gear shifting hangs completely off good cables. So now is also a really great opportunity to check yours. If they're anything other than perfect, then it's probably worth replacing them. Although, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you will probably have noticed that I actually haven't got any gear cables on this bike. So now is also a very good opportunity to remind you to check and charge all batteries. So your gears, if yours are electronic, your power meter, if you're lucky enough to have one, your head unit, if you've got one, your motor, if you... No, sorry, I'm only kidding. Although actually, if you did have a motor, you probably want to make sure that's charged as well. Just otherwise, you know. Next up, wheels. Now, I can't promise to eliminate punctures, but a quick look at your tyres beforehand could well save your day. The first thing to do is to check the sidewall of the tyre for any nicks or cuts. Now, if I find anything, I'd be inclined, I'm afraid, to put the tyre in the bin, at least if it is before a big event. Because although you can patch up sidewalls, I'm not sure I completely trust it on a high pressure road tyre. Although no doubt many of you will have done that repair very successfully. And then you want to turn your attention to the rubber tread itself and just have a look and see whether you can find any pieces of glass or stone that are half embedded in the tyre. If you do come across anything, then take a trusty pick and just lever it out. One puncture less. Check your brake pads. If your event is an absolute epic in foul conditions, the last thing you want is to hear that sound of metal on metal or metal on carbon as you wear through your brake pads with a combination of long descents and wet weather. So all you've got to do is make sure there's plenty of life left in them. And if you've got any doubt at all, just replace the pads completely. You can always keep the old ones, just stick them in your spares box. Although, just be a little bit careful because you may end up, like me, with tens of slivers of brake pads knocking around in your toolbox. It's absolutely imperative for the next 2 checks that you don't do it the night before your event. You need to do it a few days beforehand to give yourself a chance to test your bike if you've had to make any changes. Now, worn chains can cause gear issues, but personally, I'd be more worried about broken chains. If it happens mid-event, then that's race over or PB out the window, even though you can, of course, fix them at the side of the road. Now, there's no fail-safe way to tell if your chain is about to break, but if you inspect all the links closely, you'll be able to spot any that are perhaps starting to splay apart. Or if you look at your jockey wheel and your back pedal, you'll see if any links are stiff. That also is a good indicator. And then finally, I suppose you could just think back to the last time you changed your chain. If you can't remember, it's probably a good time to change it. However, you've got to remember that changing your chain might have implications on your cassette and your chain rings as well, because as your chain wears, it also wears both of those components as well, meaning that if you leave it too late to change your chain, when you do actually change it, the new one might not work properly. It'll skip under load because it doesn't mesh correctly with your old parts. So this is the reason why, if you do change your chain, that you have to do it a few days in advance to give yourself time to test the bike to make sure that it all works correctly. And it's also the reason why I would forgive you if you didn't change anything the night before. Do not do this the night before, please. One final thing then is to check the cleats on your shoes. Now, it's easy to forget these. They are the domestiques of the bike component world. They suck up mile after mile of untold punishment, and you probably never think to congratulate them at the end of the day. But one quick look will tell you if they're worn out. And a worn out cleat can quite easily break, or maybe just not hold your foot into the pedal securely, something that you might only find out is a problem when it comes to your race-winning sprint. If they do look in reasonably good shape, then I would still run an Allen key over the bottom of the bolts just to make sure that they are cinched up correctly. Although, it has to be said, much like your chain, I wouldn't replace my cleats the night before a big event, unless you're really, really good at measuring and you don't suffer from knee injuries. There you go then, a quick and simple bike check that will let you know if your bike is close to perfect in time for your big event. Now, one final pro tip actually, if you clean your bike thoroughly before this job, it will not only make it much quicker, it will also make the whole thing much nicer as well. Now, if you need to know how to do any of the processes that we touched on in this video, if you click just up there, you get through to our maintenance playlist. We've covered just about everything that you ever need to do to your bike on GCN so far. But if you do think we've missed something, make sure you let us know in the comments section down below. Or to see that video about indexing, I've already mentioned, if you click just down there, you get through to that. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to GCN before you go. To do that, just click on the globe.